Let glory shine. From the ashes I rise. Every scar a story, every tear baptized. This is my freedom. This is my climb. Let glory shine. It's the power inside.
Hello and welcome back to Let Glory Shine. I'm your host, Martha Glory, and I'm so excited to be here once again for another episode of Let Glory Shine. It is always a privilege and a pleasure to get to have somebody on my show that I feel so aligned with and so on mission with. Because it's amazing to always see what God's doing in other people's lives because I feel so passionate about what I see God doing in my own. I met this person that I'm getting ready to interview, Heather Eck, through one of the organizations that I'm part of, CLA. And I can't wait for y'all to hear this conversation that we're about to have because when I first met her for a quick Zoom coffee call, it was we couldn't get enough of each other and enough of each other's story. So we both were like, "You got to be on my show." And I'll be on hers next week. So I can't wait for you to meet her. Let's bring her on. Heather Eck, welcome to Let Glory Shine.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. And look at all the beautiful colors. I can't wait for you to tell us why you're sitting in front of these huge, beautiful canvases, because I know they are part of your story. So why don't
Mhm.
you tell our audience a little bit about Heather Eck?
Awesome. Well, I'm a visual artist based out of like Raleigh, North Carolina. And prior to making art, I spent about 20 years in corporate HR and got the kind of tired that no amount of time off was going to fix. And I kind of had that, that revelatory thing that happens where you're like, there's got to be something more for me out here. There's got to be something that God wants me to do that I am not doing currently. And it usually takes a shakeup or a breakthrough or a breakdown to make that happen. And for me, my health really started to go downhill and high blood pressure and all of that stuff. So now I paint for a living. I have something called synesthesia and clairsentience. So I can sort of tune into people's energies, see color around them, and then I'll paint portraits that tell a story about where they're feeling stuck or blocked. And I also paint large, abstract paintings that reflect essentially like what I'm learning in the Bible and what I'm learning about God and these ideas of bigger sort of spiritual themes that pop up in my work.
Wow. This is not like an everyday hobby or line of work. This was a first for me. I had never seen someone doing this in this way. The only time that I had ever seen something similar was at a arts and it was like a holistic art healing fair that I went to, Body, Mind, and Spirit in
Hmm.
Raleigh.
Yep.
And there was a woman doing it, and I was watching her paint, but I didn't stop by to like learn what she was doing. I just saw her painting, and
Oh, cool.
so when I thought of that when you first told me what you did, I thought about that lady, and I was like, I wonder if that's what she was doing. I wonder if that's what she saw. I wonder if that's what, you know. So that's very
Hmm.
cool. I want to back up and talk a little bit about corporate because we both came out of corporate,
Hmm.
and you are so right that it usually takes a breakdown, a breakthrough, or a complete like shakeup in order to allow yourself to step out of something, even if it's really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Because, you know, like you, I was making six figures. I was like miserable. I was empty, but I was also paying the bills and living a fairly lavish life, right? I was
Yeah.
able to live in a nice house and cars and the children were taking care all the things, right? And then suddenly the emptiness and the pain became more than the lavish lifestyle I was living. And
Yeah.
you're like, and I went through this, like, can I live like this any longer? And the answer was no.
Yep.
And like you, my health was failing. I was in my 30s, my health was failing, and my body was a mess. And then you're going, okay, something's got to give. And for me, I had to give up that corporate job, and it sounds like you did too. So I want you to go back to that moment where you had to make that very difficult decision, because I know it's similar to what I did, where I was like, oh, well, I'm a massage therapist. I can go make $30,000 a year and have happiness and joy and contentment. But I'm also not going to be making the kind of money that we're used to, right? What does that mean for my life? What does that mean for my family unit? I had to go through all of those questions.
Hmm.
And the joy and the peace of self became way more important than the money that I would be losing in taking that job change. So talk
Yeah.
about that moment for you.
Yeah, very similar, honestly. I was in corporate HR. I had worked for very creative companies. I'd worked in advertising, I'd worked in banking, I'd worked in video games, and six figures, great bonuses, awesome benefits, all the things. And I couldn't drive into work in the morning without this overwhelming sense of dread in my gut. I would pray, I would meditate, I would do all the things. I would get into the office and I just felt like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And I did start working with a spiritual teacher. I've been spiritual my entire life. I think I came into this world like wanting nothing more than to draw close to God, understand, and do what I'm supposed to be doing here. I just think that expectations and ideas and what people say and opinions and all these things have clouded my judgment. And I got to this point where I was like, I don't know who I am or what I'm into or what I should be doing or anything. And so I was working with a spiritual teacher who I still work with. And she was like, what were you like as a kid? What were you into? And I talk about this all the time on podcasts and even on my own, where I say like, what you are drawn to as a child is a huge indication of what your purpose and your path is here. And mine was art. It just was. I was interested in music. I would draw. I wrote poems. I was dancing. Like everything around me was screaming creative expression. And then here I was sort of squeezing myself into this box and trying to hide who I was and blend in and not be the weird, eccentric kind of crazy like bird that I am, you know. Um, so I started painting shortly thereafter. And then people would come into my office and I would see them, they would stand against my white wall and I would see color start to billow out around their heads. And I was just sort of curious about what that was. And I was the kind of HR person where, you know, I was kind of like I think this actually, I've talked to a lot of former HR people who are like, same. We had crystals on our desk, we had the salt lamp, we had all these things to like attract positive energy into our spaces. And people would come in and they'd take my stones and then they would leave, or they'd come in and go, I had a weird dream last night. Can I tell you about it? Or can I ask you about this thing? And it felt like I had hung this invisible signpost over my office door that was like, you can talk to me about the woo. And they did. And so, you know, life went on. I was still painting. I was taking time off of work to paint. I was applying to shows, etc. And on one night, I had gotten a promotion. It was the biggest one I had gotten, a huge raise, and I also got my first art show on the same day. And I remember sitting in bed with holding my phone, looking at the invitation for the art show, and I was lit up, like shaking, excited. And then when I thought about the promotion, I wanted to throw up. And I felt like, oh my gosh, this is what it means to feel your way through something because my body was literally telling me, this is the path to go down. It excites you. It feels really freaking scary. You probably have a little pee running down your leg, but that is the path. This one makes you feel like you're going to die. Don't choose that one, you know?
Right.
Um, yeah. And so I had to really pay attention to that. And so it was about another full year later. Um, I had decided I'm going to go in and give my notice. It was the week before my 40th birthday and or no, my 39th birthday actually. And I went into my boss to tell him that I was going to resign, but it was September and I was going to say, but I'll plan to work through the end of the year to kind of transition whatever. And the instant that the words came out of my mouth, he stood up, walked me down the hall, told my entire team, and within 2 weeks, I had no job. And I fully, fully believe that God squeezed me out at that moment because if I had stayed, I don't think I would have ever left. And as scary as it was and still is sometimes, I know that if I had stayed there, I would not have survived it. Spiritually, physically, emotionally, I would not have survived it. And so I took a giant flying leap of faith off the side of a mountain and and have been, waiting for the net to appear ever since then.
But you haven't crashed because you
No.
have, right, because you have the joy, the passion, the peace that comes with stepping into alignment with all that you've been created to be. Again, you said so many amazing things that I just want to like put back into a little nugget of because it's so important. The remembering of self is what you're describing, right? Like as a
Mhm.
kid, that playfulness, that creativity, that imagination, that desire to just be free, right? And we forget that because of conditioning and all of the things that happen in our lives or and we forget who we are. And so part of this journey that you and I have both taken after corporate is the
Yeah.
remembering of self, of like what is important to me, what I am I here on this planet for while I'm in this human meat suit. What is it that I'm supposed to do with my life? What is it
Yep.
that I'm called to do? What have I signed up for, right? Like that's what gets me excited is like I was meant for more. I knew I was meant for more, but I didn't know what that meant. And
Yeah.
so that whole process of remembering self. And then so exactly the same way when I was in corporate administration, it's like I had that invisible sign of the woo woo is safe here because the exact same things happened to me. But I think that's because when you have that faith and that grace and that empathy for the human experience as a whole, I was starting to have that for myself. And so that then radiates to others, right? That
Yeah.
says, I can hold that space for you as well, right? That
Yeah.
we create the containers of that. And so I resonated so deeply when you said that. I was like, I had the same sign. I totally get that.
The invisible sign. Yeah.
The invisible sign. All right, so talk to us now about what your days look like because you've taken this giant leap of faith, jumped off the mountain, waiting for the net appear. The net is constantly appearing, whether you realize it or not. But
Yes.
at the same time, because you're held, I mean, I see the protection around you, right? So,
Thank
what
you.
do your days look like now?
Oh my gosh, it really varies day by day. And I think that's because I do still have little side hustles here and there that help support. And I feel very grateful for those opportunities that have held me in that space. I just said to somebody the other day, because my husband just lost his job on Friday. And I instantly went into panic mode because when you have that loss of steady income, your benefits ever. I've been very blessed to have been able to take this leap of faith because we've had that safety net there. And that safety net dropped on Friday, literally. And so I immediately went to panic mode. And then I was like, okay, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack
Mm.
nothing. And so I have literally been trying to stay in that space. But so all of that to say, my day to day really centers around uh, when I start my day with my Bible study and with my prayer, my day goes so much smoother. My day feels organized. My day feels, and I think that that is me trying to learn to listen to what it is that I should be doing instead of trying to drive the day and move the day. So there are some days where it's all administration. I'm working on my website, I'm working on updating listings for paintings or glasses or whatever it is. And then there are other days where it's painting or I'm recording a podcast or what have you. But a lot of it for me in this journey has been about learning to listen to and be led instead of trying to drive and push so much of what I'm working on. But from a discipline perspective, I think as an artist, what I've tried to get into the rhythm of is daily Bible study, prayer, and then painting. And letting that sort of move into what did I just study? What does that look like? What does that translate to in terms of art? And then just sort of letting the day unfold as it needs to. But every single day is different. Just like in corporate, there were days where I was like, oh, I've got control of this day. And then it goes completely sideways. And you're like, what happened?
Well, the difference is we don't feel suffocated in a box, right? Like
Right.
regardless of how off, or chaotic my day gets, it's never that suffocating chaos of corporate,
Yes.
right? Like I
100%.
like because my space can never feel like that again because I'm not, I'm not a number, I'm not a like a deadline, I'm not all the things. So my worst day here is still my best day in corporate.
Yes.
I'm just gonna say it, right? You said
100%.
something that I was in a class last night and we were talking about, and that is when you're in the flow, right? When you're in the flow of what it is that is the reason for us to breathe, right? And give back in this way, right? Of our life means something. When we're in
Hmm.
that flow, you have to have discipline. You have to have intentionality. We make time for the things that are important to us, right? And when you start your day in the way that you're talking about, I do very much similar. I get out of bed, I meditate, I pray, I do yoga, I do the
Hmm.
things that I know fill my cup because regardless of how my day unfolds, I have to start with that foundation or I'm just going to leave it up to the energies to control my day, right? And
Exactly. Yep.
I'm not willing to do that. And I hear that from you as well. That starts the flow of my day in the right way.
Hmm. Yeah. And I can feel the difference on the days where I don't get to do that. And I think part of it for me is sort of taking back, I don't want to call it control because I have no control over anything, but sort of taking back ownership of my time because I think for so long it felt like it was controlled by other people and other things. And now I sort of get to craft that day. And when I invite God into it and say, like, well, what do you want me to do? It feels like it's so much smoother than on the days where I don't do that. And then I feel like chaos ensues in whatever way, it wants to try to step in. So, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. The freedom I think that I feel is what I've always wanted. And I am thankful for that because that enables me to feel creatively free to paint whatever needs to come through and to offer that out in a way that feels like me as a sort of like a channel for what the messages are that come through too.
So I'm curious, do you do this painting in workshop settings? Do you do this in one-on-one? Do you do this in retreats? Like, where do you use this expression, this artistic expression to gain clients or
Hmm.
to, help others on their journey? Like, what does that look like for you today?
Yeah. So a couple of different things. One is I sort of think of it as like two separate things. One are like the larger paintings behind me that I sort of reserve for exhibitions and galleries and things and sort of want those to live wherever they need to live in larger offices or homes or whatever that is. And then I sort of have this practice of creative healing. So I'll invite people into a space where they can learn to reconnect to themselves through art and through color. And so every month I hold what's called a color healing community call. And it's essentially like a free hour-long call where you can come in. We do a meditation. We do a little creative healing exercise. So sort of like art therapy, but less therapy, more therapeutic, I guess. And we talk about color and we talk about the ways that color can be healing for us. And you were so sweet in saying, oh, this is your color, this bright pink sweater that I'm wearing today. And yeah, I mean, it is. I think when we wear color, when we use color, we put it in our homes, it supports us in ways we cannot even possibly imagine. And so we talk about using color for healing through our art and how what we're drawn to, what we're repelled by, all of those things. And then I have bigger containers where I'll work one-on-one with somebody to read their energy, to read their colors, and then to develop a map for how, okay, here's where you are. Here's where you might be feeling stuck. How do we move you through those blocks using art, using conversation, using all these different modalities to help you feel better? So it's sort of like a creative healing journey that I take people on so that they can feel more like themselves, feel like they've rediscovered who they are and why they're here and how to embody that in a really authentic and loving way.
Wow. Wow. Um, s- yeah. I would like you to share with us, like, what is one of the testimonials that you've received from this work that you're doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I just had one written down on my desk because one of my clients just wrapped up her time. We were together for 4 months, and she said it was the most priceless experience she'd had because she came in with so much anger and frustration about the ending of her marriage. And we kind of joked, we didn't joke about the ending of her marriage, but we joked about what her transformation was because she said, I don't even know what happened, but after we did this exercise together, I was no longer mad at him. And I think she was just able to move through the feeling of anger and frustration into a place of forgiveness. So she's more in touch now with her feelings than she was before. It's almost like she had given herself permission
Mm,
to just feel the feelings, and that she could create without any expectation. And I think that's one of the things that as kids, we have the freedom to just dance and paint and draw and sing and all the things. And then all of a sudden we grow up and we lose that. And so she said that, it's such a gift to know that you don't have to show or sell or share anything that you create, that you have created just for you to be able to express what it is that you're feeling and just get it out. And so I think that has been one of the most powerful experiences because she truly, when she came in, she was like, I don't know who I am. I can't say anything. People don't listen to me. I'm so mad. I'm the blah, blah, blah. And now she's like, I love it. I paint just for fun. She's like, I just sat with my feelings over Christmas and I was really sad and I just sat and was sad. And then I painted about it and now I feel better. And I'm like, this is great. That's what we want. We just want you to feel better. And we do it in a really gentle way. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that it helps you reconnect with what's actually happening for you, that you just are blocking or putting into a little tight box and squishing it way, way
yes.
down.
Yeah. I love that this creative expression gives permission because I talk about that a lot in my trauma program or my coaching program about giving yourself permission, right? Why we feel like we need permission, like that's a whole societal conditioning that I could go down the rabbit hole of, and I'm not going to, but the idea of receiving permission, right? Like I started out sharing my story because I knew that it would give others permission to share theirs if they heard mine, right? And
Yeah.
it has over the last couple of years of me doing it over and over. God has been like, somebody will reach out to me and be like, thank you so much for sharing this. Like I wasn't in a cult, but I did experience this and I thought I was alone. I didn't know anybody, right? And so it makes people feel less alone and it gives them permission to speak about theirs. And then that creates the expansion of feeling, right? Because for whatever reason, as we grow up and out of childhood, we learn how to numb,
Yeah.
and that is one of the harshest realities of growing up is that we learn how to numb. And it's not anybody said just start numbing, right? Nobody said use those words or that vocabulary, but it's like instinctually just taught to us, right? Because we're taught, oh, get up and shake it off and rub some dirt on it, and that didn't hurt
Yep.
that bad. And what are you talking about? Feelings? Shut your mouth. Whatever.
Yep.
And suddenly we're numbing, finding ways to numb. And the numbing is what turns into the trauma,
Yeah.
because the trauma is not the actual act of what happened to us. The trauma is the identities that we take from what happened to us, the unworthiness, the abandonment, the unlovable, the all of those things. The trauma is not actually what happened to us. It's
Hmm.
the identities that we carry and the things that we start to do, like the numbing, that becomes our trauma, that we have to undo, that we have to
Yeah.
unbecome, that we have to recalibrate from, right? And so giving yourself permission to start feeling again starts to resolve and dissolve those trauma entities.
Yep. Oh, I love the way you just said that. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's so many different ways to move through those feelings. Mine just happens to be creative, like it just happens to work with art and color. And I feel like if I were to tell you, just pick up a sheet of, grab a coloring book and some crayons and just sit down for a few minutes, within 10 or 15 minutes, you'd be like, oh, I feel so relaxed. This is so nice because you get out of your head and you just sort of start to let go. And then you begin to get clarity on things. Oh, you know what? That conversation wasn't as bad as I thought. Or, you know what? Actually, instead of this, I want to do this. And it's all because you just gave yourself some space to get out of your monkey mind and into your body and to just sort of feel.
Yeah.
And that is priceless. That's the priceless part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any way to quiet the noise, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As adults, we have so much noise going on in our heads, in our minds, right? In our thoughts. And then not even to talk about the noise out there that infiltrates, right?
All of that. Yep.
All of that.
Yeah.
And so anything that it allows us to come back to presence, to come
Hmm.
back to now, to come back to this exact moment, because this is the only one that matters,
Oh.
right? And in
Yep.
a second, the moment has changed. So any amount of time that we can take to bring in the moment and to be present in that moment is priceless, is
Yep.
priceless. And so
Yeah.
I feel that so deeply in what you're talking about and what your client experienced. And I'm sure that all of your clients do it in that way because I know that that's the same for me is understanding how do we bring in the presence? How do we bring in the moment? So what does that mean for you to bring yourself back to present? How do you do that? I'm sure you do painting, but what else do you do to really stay present?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, I've been learning to, well, you know that I'm immersed in Bible study. I'm obsessed with it. I'm a total Bible nerd. I'm studying biblical Hebrew. I'm learning how to read the word in a really intentional way. And one of the ways that I do that is just by reading it out loud. I've found that when I read in my mind, I can get very distracted. But when I read it out loud, there's something about the speaking of the words that it like helps me retain it. And it helps me stay present because I'm literally reading and speaking at the same time. And so that helps me stay really present. And I think the other thing I've learned recently is when I am on my phone when my family is present, that means that I'm giving attention to somebody who's not here in the room with me. I'm giving attention to people who are
Oh, wow.
on the phone, not in the room. And so I've started to learn to go, wait a minute, that person's not here. Their situation maybe, maybe they need a response from me, but do they need it right now? They're not physically here with me, but these people are. And so how do I stay
Mm.
present with them? Because I know you're a mom too, so you get it. Like my son is 13. I don't know where those years went, but I
I
imagine
know.
I like picture him when he's really small, and I
Mhm.
almost feel like I'm grieving that time because that sweet little nugget is now taller than I am. And I'm like, where did that time go? And I sort of, not regret, but I go, I kind of wish I had been more present with that tiny little person to have
Yeah.
all of those feelings and emotions. And so I look at him at 13 and I'm like, I just want to be present with you now because 5 years from now, you're going to be in college. And then what do I do? So just trying to like remember to take in that feeling.
Yeah, the one I struggle with the most is like, if I had only known what I know now, right? Would I have
Yeah.
been a different mom? Would I have been right? And
Yeah.
the truth is no, because my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 10, and they've been through the evolution with me, right?
Yep.
And the one thing that I can say is I've always been intentional in the mom department because I had been deprived of that growing up, right? Like that. And so I always wanted to be a better mom than I had, or I wanted to be a better caregiver than whatever it was. Like I was overcompensating when at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, no, the understanding of the present moment is all that we have. And so they've gone through this evolution with me of kind of finding self and allowing that to ripple out to them,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so true. I do think about what my son is seeing in our family because of the decisions that we've made, because mommy used to work at a really cool video game company, but now she's an artist and she does this on her own. Like what he sees, what he'll take away from that, I hope inspires and enables him to make decisions that will be healthy for him in the future because he can see what's possible when you choose yourself versus what you think you should be doing. Things like that I hope reflect positively for him.
Absolutely. Heather, unfortunately, we are out of time, which is always so sad when it feels like we're just getting started. We
I
could
know,
do
I can't
another
wait to
whole hour
continue. Yeah.
on this. I always end my show the same way, and that's asking each guest, what does it mean to allow Heather's glory to shine?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think, um, I try to, what I'm trying to do is to reflect God in my work. And
Mm,
so, in that way, I don't really want to glorify myself, but glorify God through the pieces and the stories that they tell, and trust that in that work, I'll be cared for, I'll be provided
mm,
for, I'll be nurtured and loved.
mm.
I think
Yeah.
that's like the biggest thing for me more recently, for sure.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Yes.
Thanks.
Girl, you are letting your Heather shine. I love it. Let your glory shine. Thank you so much for being on my show. It's been an absolute blessing to hear you share and seeing what God's doing in you and through you, and for so many others that you get to make an impact with. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining for another episode of Let Glory Shine. I look forward to seeing you next week, same place, same station. Y'all have a great night, and I love you.
Let glory shine from the ashes I rise. Every scar a story, every tear baptized. This is my freedom, this is my climb. Let glory shine, it's the power inside. This is your prosperity.